Okay. Thank you, Susan. My camera has been doing this thing because I switched cameras. In case you didn't know, I now film with the G7X Mark III, and it does this weird autofocus thing. So hopefully using Susan, I can just pinpoint a focus point and we'll be good to go. Also, what do we think about the new background? This is also temporary. Still haven't got those bookshelves that I keep talking about. If you like this though, I can film here anytime. We got our dining chairs, they're green, but we're settling in finally and getting furniture, and it's a good time here. Okay, so today we're going to be doing a what I watched in February. I want to do monthly Letterboxd videos inspired by Emma from Spooky Astronauts, of course, because we all watch different things, and I want to give you guys a peek into what I'm watching throughout the months. So let's talk about February. It was another slow month, I would say. I only watched 12 movies, which is really, really low for me. I think in December I watched twice that. I actually watched a lot of non-horror movies, so I kind of won't really touch on those too much. I'll focus mostly on the horror. And only 2 rewatches out of the 12, which is really, really good. I rewatch a ton of movies usually, so the fact that I watched 10 new movies that I'd never seen before is really good for me. First movie I watched of the month was actually Ryan's pick. Some of these are Ryan's picks because we obviously switch off on what movies we watch. He watches a lot of movies with me, so I watch movies with him and the ones that he wants to watch, and I think it'll be pretty obvious which ones on this list are his. This first one is one of his picks, and that is Greyhound from 2020. I'd never heard of this movie. It has Tom Hanks in it. He was actually the writer, I believe, of this, and I think producer, but obviously he's the lead as well. It is a war movie, so I actually really enjoy war movies. And Greyhound was actually really good. It was very procedural war, like a procedural war movie, so there was a lot of like technical aspects of what was going on. They were on a ship, which I find really interesting. Anything out at sea or submarine involved, love it. Did I like give that a star rating on Letterboxd? Let me see. Oh, okay. I gave it 3.5 out of 5. Ryan gave it 4 out of 5. In case you wanted to know his rating of that, because it was his movie pick. He really enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. It was a good, entertaining war movie if you're into that. Next up though is a somewhat horror movie in Synchronic. I think that's how you say it, Synchronic. This was released in October of 2020, and I actually didn't hear too many people talk about it. I did hear about it through word of mouth, like social media and things like that, other people watching it, talking about it. So I did see some things, but I don't think it was like a big release where everyone was talking about it, kind of like Possessor, where it was kind of spread through word of mouth. This is actually more of a sci-fi thriller and has a really good cast with people that I recognize. Anthony Mackie plays the lead, and Jamie Dornan is also in this. This movie follows 2 paramedic friends who are called to a series of gruesome and bizarre accidents, but they attribute them to a new drug found at each location. This one really had me in the first half. It was so incredible. The amount of gore that was in it really caught me off guard. I wasn't really expecting that, but it was such a pleasant surprise to see, because I was kind of expecting a lower budget type I don't know, sci-fi movie, but there was actually a lot of gore and intensity in the first half of this movie. And anytime there's like a drug storyline, it tends to be more disturbing for me personally. There are times where it goes too far, like in climax, and then times like in Midsummer where it's like appropriate, and it just adds to the disturbing element of the movie. It's just one of my personal fears, drugs, trippy drugs, things like that. No thank you. Of course, then things take a turn and the plot develops. Anthony Mackie's character starts investigating more into this drug and realizing what it actually does and why these people are dying from it. And then it turns really weird and gets a little comedic. Like, they added comedy into this movie that just I didn't get personally. I didn't really like it that much. And then the movie gets a little bit too fantasy for my liking, because then we start getting more into the drug itself and the sci-fi elements of this instead of the horror and the gore from the first half of the movie. It also gets a little bit cliche. I found it pretty predictable by the end, especially in the final scenes. I knew what was gonna happen and what was happening. They really like spoon-fed you everything towards the end, which I usually don't like. However, I still think this is definitely worth a watch because it is super entertaining, and like I said, the gore is good. The horror elements in the first half are amazing. I wish that they maintained that a little bit more throughout. instead of adding so much fantasy sci-fi kind of elements. I don't know. It does kind of let you down in the end, but overall it's a complete story and the pacing is really good. So I gave it 3.5 stars out of 5 on Letterboxd. I'm also sorry if there's an echo. When I film over here, the rug and living room is all set up over here, and I feel like that helps with the echo. But then when I'm over here, it's like kitchen and it's just all open with no rug. So let me know if the echo's too bad in this location and we'll switch it up again. Okay, next up we have Mirrors, which came out in 2008, and this was a first watch for me. And I know what you're thinking. This is like kind of a famous early 2000s horror movie, and I was just surprised that I had never seen it. What got me to really want to watch this movie was actually seeing GIFs of this movie, certain deaths, on Twitter. And I was like, what is that from? And I saw that people said it was from Mirrors, and I was like, all right, I need to watch that. Specifically the bathtub mirror scene is the one that I saw on Twitter, and I was like, that looks really good. Cheesy, but like early 2000s cheesy, so obviously it would work for me. So this stars Kiefer Sutherland as he takes a job as a security guard in an abandoned department store, and he begins seeing disturbing images in the ornate mirrors that line the walls. I did think that I would like this movie a little bit more than I actually did. I found it to be pretty cheesy, and obviously it has a lot of the early 2000s elements in it that I love anyway. If you're not a huge fan of early 2000s, this wouldn't be the best movie pick for you. Sorry, my cat is in the litter box if you're hearing that noise. That's what that is. Anyway, I actually bought this movie before ever having seen it used on Depop, I think, and I don't regret owning it now because it is a fun movie, and I feel like it's one that I can put on if I don't know what else to watch, and I will definitely rewatch this movie. It was good enough to where I'll definitely put it on over and over again. Overall, I gave this 3 out of 5 stars on Letterboxd. I think it deserves a little bit more than that. Maybe I'll bump it to 3.5 stars because it is a rewatchable movie for me, very much so, but it wasn't like the best movie of the month. Next up, I watched The Wandering Earth from 2019. This is a Chinese science fiction, fantasy-ish, apocalyptic space movie. Is that enough genres for you? I actually just talked about this movie in my top 10 space apocalypse movies, so I will link that video if you want to go watch that and hear my thoughts about this one specifically. But overall, love this movie, highly, highly recommend. Next up, I watched Hands on a Hardbody documentary from 1997. This is the oldest one of the month. And I actually saw this documentary mentioned on TikTok, and it looked really intriguing and something my boyfriend and I would definitely watch. So we watched it, and it was actually amazing. It's just so weird, so 90s. Like, if you grew up in the 90s like me, this is just the era of, it's just classic. The outfits in it are just, but overall this is a really weird and interesting documentary. It follows a group of people who are competing to win a truck from this dealership that does this, I think, once a year or so, and it's hands on a hardbody, so you have to keep one hand on this hardbody truck at all times, and then you're given breaks for intervals and things, and this goes on for days. People lose their minds. Like, they start to laugh uncontrollably. It is so weird, so interesting, and it's all like real, but it's like low budget. You do actually have to purchase this in order to watch it. It's not one of those streaming on anywhere or like illegally, you can't do that. So definitely recommend purchasing it. I think it's like $4 or something like that. It's worth it, trust me. It's just so interesting. If you're into weird, obscure documentaries, definitely recommend Hands on a Hardbody. After that, I watched Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince. I just finished rereading the book. Moving on to Deathly Hallows here soon, and we'll watch that movie probably in March as well. I don't think I need to go into Half-Blood Prince. It's not my favorite Harry Potter movie, but it's up there. I really like it. It's one of my least rewatched, but obviously it's about Snape, most kind of, so I enjoy it a bit. Snape is a prevalent character in it. I know. I just want to hold you. Okay, next up I watched Saint Maud, which we all know anyway because I just did a review on it, a whole video dedicated review to Saint Maud. If you want to know my thoughts, I will link it. But it was one of my favorite movies that I watched in February, hands down. Actually, it probably was my favorite movie that I watched in February. So amazing. I think it's 4 out of 5 stars. Amazing, incredible, love this movie. Although it is a love-hate movie, so a lot of people love it, a lot of people hate it. I don't really know if there's any in between. It's very polarizing. Okay, next is another early 2000s movie that was a first time watch for me that will probably surprise you that I've never seen this movie. My Bloody Valentine from 2009. This is of course a remake movie. This one was filmed for 3D, which definitely dates this movie quite a bit because that is something that happened in like early 2000s, mid 2000s, 2010 era that a lot of movies seem to do. So it was very cheesy and very dated in my opinion. Some of the 3D elements were just so over the top and unnecessary. This of course follows Tom on the 10th anniversary of the Valentine's Night Massacre, where 22 people died, and is suspected of committing the murders. I was actually pretty impressed with the complexity of this storyline. I thought it was gonna kind of be one of your traditional cheesy early 2000s slasher movies, but I was actually impressed that there was plot development, there were layers. There were so many layers to this plot, probably a little too many for the purpose of this movie, but overall it was pretty surprising and in a good way. There were definitely a lot of twists, a lot of turns. You're questioning a lot of things in this, which I really enjoyed. Actually, I thought it was gonna be way more predictable towards the end and was happy that it was not. Obviously, this is still full of cliches and still a very dated movie given the 3D aspects of it, but it was a really enjoyable experience. I had a good time watching it, and obviously, of course, it's good to watch on Valentine's Day, and I love holiday horror movies because I typically watch them every holiday. There's always at least one or two that you can watch every holiday. So this is definitely added to my daily or my Valentine's Day experience every year. I'm just gonna watch this every year. On Letterboxd, I gave that 3 out of 5 stars. Next up is another Ryan movie. He picked out The Hurt Locker, which I had never seen, from 2008. Again, another enjoyable war movie. This one's a little bit different. It follows like a bomb squad and things, so it's a little bit more dramatic than war, which I can appreciate. I don't mind an action war movie now and again, but I liked that The Hurt Locker had like more depth to it, and the psychological aspect of it in the end I think was really good. Not a huge fan of the lead actor in it. I forget his name, but he's in Arrival, he's Hawkeye, whatever. I'm not a huge fan of him as an actor. Oh my god. Hello.
That's heavy, be careful.
Oh, okay, thank you. Wow. I got a package. Anyway, let's move on to the next movie. I'm actually really excited to talk about this next movie because if you watch any from this video, I recommend Saint Maud, and I recommend this one. However, that being said, I seem to have a very unpopular opinion in liking this movie, which really shocked me when I saw this all online and stuff. I did not know I was in the minority here. So watch at your own risk. You might hate it. And that is Fractured from 2019. This was released as a Netflix original in October of 2019 and is directed by Brad Anderson, who brought us the amazing thriller movie Session 9. I love that movie. And this follows a family who enters a hospital after their daughter is injured, but when his wife and daughter go missing, the husband thinks that the hospital is actually hiding something. Critics seem to despise this movie, and I get why. You know, they point out that it's repetitive, a little predictable, a little cliche, shallow. I get it. I can see that when pointed out, but I didn't get any of that when I was watching it personally. It was a tad predictable when I was watching it, and I can agree that some of the hospital scenes were kind of repetitive, but the fact that you're constantly questioning if the hospital is actually evil and if these people have like abducted his wife and child, I think they do a really good job in portraying the hospital in kind of a negative light for a really long time. And I thought it was effective. I was really shocked to see this rated so low and critics hating this so much. Not that their opinion necessarily matters. I had a great time watching this, so if you just go in going along for the ride and not expecting too deep of a movie, I think this movie is incredible. I think the acting especially is really strong in this. This stars Sam Worthington, which if you watched the series on Netflix called Manhunt, highly recommend. That's one of my favorite shows on Netflix. Manhunt, the season 1 and season 2 were both amazing, and I'm not a horror-y thriller show person, but but I loved both of these series. And Sam Worthington is the lead in Manhunt in season 1. He plays the lead detective, and he plays the lead in this movie. So I think he's a great actor, kind of a little typecast. He kind of plays the same kind of character, I feel like, in both. But personally, I was genuinely questioning everything up to the end, although at the end it was a little predictable and I kind of could guess what was probably going to happen, what was most likely to happen. But it's definitely top 2 movies that I watched in February. Obviously I only watched 12, so it's not going up against a lot, but it was actually a really pleasant surprise and I'm really glad that I watched this one. But for Fractured, I gave it 4 out of 5 stars on Letterboxd. I think it was really good. Okay, so next I watched No Escape Room, which is a 2018 movie. This is the worst movie that I watched in February. Did not enjoy this one. This is on Netflix, and I typically love the escape room kind of premise. The movie Escape Room from 2019, early 2019, was one of my favorite movies in the last 5 years or so. I love that movie, and again, I feel like not a lot of people like it. It's definitely more like action thriller than straight up horror, but I was kind of expecting this to be a lower budget kind of movie anyway, but still within the escape room storyline. So I had high hopes that it was going to be good. I didn't necessarily have high expectations. So this follows a father and daughter who decide to do a small town's escape room, and of course it's not just an escape room, as we know with these kind of plot lines. Things start happening. My biggest criticism of this movie was hands down the casting. I could not get into this movie. For one, they weren't the best actors I've ever seen. 2, the father probably doesn't have kids in real life. I felt literally no connection, no chemistry, like father-daughter chemistry between the 2 lead actors. Felt none of that. So I'm not a fan of the casting. I feel like they could have casted a more like fatherly type man to play this role, and I just didn't get into the characters. I didn't care about them, and thus I got bored when things started happening to them. I think the script tried extra hard to be like really complicated and complex. When you're doing a lower budget movie like this, you don't need to be that complicated. It does get supernatural and weird, obviously. I thought it was a little cheesy, the supernatural elements of it. I can appreciate the choice to do that. I think it was different from a lot of escape rooms. You see escape room movies and you think, oh, there's a killer in there or something weird about the traps, and it's like Saw, but this one actually tried to do something different and did supernatural, which I appreciated. But with the budget and the cast, I think it could have been a little bit more simple and been more effective. Overall, I gave it 2 out of 5 stars on Letterboxd. I don't really recommend it. If you want to see like every escape room ever invented, then by all means watch this movie, but it's just, in my opinion, not worth it and you can skip it. The last movie that I watched in February was Saw. First Saw, just pretty standard movie. I actually am doing a marathon rewatch right now, so I'm starting it in February, and hopefully that will lead to an exciting video later this year, so stay tuned for that. I'm actually not going to go into my thoughts. I've actually talked about all the Saw movies on my channel before, so you can check out that playlist, but don't recommend. It was a long time ago. And I guarantee my opinions have changed about Saw and which ones are my favorites since then, probably. I imagine, I don't really know. But Saw from 2004 is one of the best in the franchise. It's just so good, so many twists. I love this movie and definitely one of the most rewatchable in the entire franchise. So get excited for a future video. Might have to do a Saw. I don't know. Anyway, there you have all the movies that I watched in February. It was a good month. Some really good movies and movie discoveries this month. Let me know if you have any requests for movies that you'd like me to watch. Sorry, I got distracted when people walk by. If you want me to watch certain movies in March and want to hear my thoughts on them, please leave your recommendations down in the comments and I will check them out when I have the time. But I hope you enjoyed this video and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.